I've always assumed that being black did play, despite the fact that affirmative action did not exist at that time, that being black was a positive factor in my getting into Harvard.
Harvard had that reputation, and also my mother's uncle had gone to Harvard. He was in class of 1913.
If I was affirmative action admit, I was clearly not affirmative action graduate, okay? I earned that thing, okay?
50 years ago, these three men were part of a small group of blacks admitted to Harvard College. There was a time when blacks were called Negroes and faced racism, prejudice, and lack of opportunities throughout the country. After 323 years of being an exclusive white man's institution, Harvard College admitted the largest number of African Americans in its history. The year was 1959. The number was 19.
And I was one of them. My name is Kent Garrett. 50 years ago, I was a freshman here and lived in this dorm behind me.
We were recruited from different high schools around the country, from different economic and political backgrounds. But what we had in common were our experiences with racism.
I was born in Cuba in 1940, and we lived in Havana. My grandmother came to Cuba as a slave at the age of 7.
When I was 13, Emmett Till was murdered. And I saw my mother. She didn't cry at the murder, but when Lawrence Rainey and Cecil Price, when they were acquitted, I saw my mother cry for the first time in my life.
No emphasis on race. That wasn't, we didn't talk much about it. We're trying to free this kid up. And they're also hiding me from the fact that the restaurants were segregated. So my parents would always say, well, you know, people of breeding, odd term, people of breeding, good character and background, do not eat in public places. We go to visit homes of our well-educated, refined friends.
In South Carolina, like I would go to visit my grandfather who had a beef farm and grew cotton down there. And when I went down there, I mean, we'd have to change trains. Like we would take a train to Washington, and in Washington we'd have to change to the black train to go the rest of the trip.
Before I came to Harvard, I went to Washington, D.C. with my mom and sisters, and I had 2 white high school guys from my class in Benton Harbor, and we met. We were going to go to this ride in Virginia. We didn't know anything about the segregated amusement parks. So when I went there with them, I couldn't go into the amusement park, so we didn't go. And that gave me more insight into what the kids were doing down south.
We were brought up to feel good about ourselves. We were given excellent training in the segregated schools we went to, even though we didn't have all the resources that everyone else had. We had these teachers who were so dedicated to passing something on to us that I have never, ever had any doubts about my ability.
We entered Harvard as Negroes, but graduated as blacks. In fact, because of what happened to us and the nation while we were there, historians might consider us to be the last Negroes at Harvard. This is our story.
The first day I arrived by subway at Harvard Square and came out, and there was that newsstand that was there, and I went to the guy at the newsstand and I asked him if he could tell me where Harvard was, and he laughed.
While While most of our white classmates seemed to welcome us, some saw us as curiosities. Fred Easter remembers an encounter with a curious classmate at lunch.
Do you mind talking to me, is what he said. I've never talked to a black person before. He was from North Dakota. His name was Gordy Maine. He's a hockey player. And so he asked me a bunch of questions about being black, fundamentally.
I mean, were you insulted that he was asking that?
No. He was clearly asking in the sense of what we would call academic inquiry, you know. It was cool. We got to be friends. He didn't ask what I would call insulting questions, you know. Do you suntan or anything like that?
We were the subjects of at least 2 controversial class sociology projects by white students.
We didn't really know. Were we guinea pigs? Were we tokens? Were we just students? What was going on?